Griggs, we look like we're filling up here. Can we get started? Is that okay with you?
Let's go. Thank you, Mr.
All right.
Hilgast.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to St. David's School and this fourth speaker series event of the 2020-21 school year. We've had a great lineup of speakers join us for these Sunday evening events thus far this academic year. So we are just thrilled and honored this evening to have with us Mr. Peter Hans, a president of the UNC system. And as some of you may have just heard Dr. Greg share, that we've had a couple of other UNC system presidents join the seminar over the years. So welcome to you, sir, and thank you for being here. And welcome to each of you, especially to our current students, our alums, guests of the school. We're grateful to be gathered here this evening virtually for what I know will be an opportunity for some rich dialogue. I also want to just take a quick minute to thank Emily Nelson, who is producing the event tonight and just helped us troubleshoot through some technological obstacles, as well as Mr. Joe Knott, the chairman of our board of trustees, who will formally introduce Mr. Hans in just a minute. And of course, Gil Greggs, who has worked hard to curate and coordinate and host our speaker series, which really serves as a truly invaluable resource for our learning community at St. David's. Our speaker series is designed to bring our students, our seniors in particular, into direct conversation with leaders in various fields, like Mr. Hans. And these leaders are the sort that we hope our students will seek to emulate, both in what they've accomplished through their work, but also in the way that they have gone about their work, when it has been characterized by diligence and courage, disciplined thinking, and humility. And so we're truly honored that our students not only get to hear from these leaders, but that through the senior seminar and the speaker series, they have an opportunity to engage with them directly. And I know our students will take advantage of that opportunity tonight with Mr. Hans. As I've said before, the speaker series really presents a unique opportunity to open up some space for substantive and civil public discourse, the kind that invites us to listen carefully to each other, even to divergent voices at times that may challenge us, and to listen in a way that might cause our minds to be changed from time to time. So a key priority of our work with students at St. David's is to equip them to think and to write and to debate and to listen and genuinely engage ideas, big and small, in a way that is perceptive and discerning. I know that our students will have a chance to experience that firsthand from our speaker this evening. So will you all just join me in a brief word of prayer as we begin? Our Father, we thank you for the space to gather tonight, for the work that we are privileged to do on behalf of our students at St. David's, for the honor to have and welcome Mr. Hans to our speaker series and to hear from him. We ask that you would give us ears to hear and eyes to see what you have for us this evening. In Jesus' name. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Mr. Joe Knott.
Well, good evening. It's my pleasure to be here. It's my great honor to introduce my friend Peter Hans. Let me just say this: Peter Hans is the president of the University of North Carolina, and I really don't need to say anything else. In my opinion, the president of the University of North Carolina is by far the most important public servant in this state, far beyond any governor, far beyond any state senator, far beyond any representative. This institution is what makes North Carolina, North Carolina. It is a premier, perhaps the premier state university system in the world. And it's been built for hundreds of years by great men and women throughout the history of this state. And it is led by one person. And that person is the president. And tonight or today, the president is Peter Hans, the most important man in the state, in my humble opinion. So Peter, welcome. Just a little bit about him. He's been president for a year now. Prior to that, he was president of the community college system. Prior to that, he was on the board of governors for several years. He was there in 03 and 07. In 11, he was chairman for 2 years, 12 to 14. He has overseen some major changes and restructuring in the university system. He was an advisor to Margaret Spellings, his immediate predecessor, gave her lots of input on a broad range of topics, all very important, and his counsel was valued by her. I know that to be I personally know that to be true. He grew up in Southport for part of his youth. He grew up in Hendersonville for part of his youth. He's a Tar Heel, went to Carolina. You state people don't hold that against him. He's a good man. He lives in Raleigh. He loves state too. He has his undergraduate degree from Carolina. He has a graduate degree from Harvard. He's worked in the United States Congress. He's worked for Senator Burr. He's worked for Locke Faircloth. He's worked for Senator Dole. He's good friends with the people who have been before him. He is deeply involved in our state government and the leaders in the state government on both Republican and Democrat sides. When he was elected president or chairman of the Board of Governors, and he was chairman, it was a evenly divided board. There were just as many Democrats as Republicans, just as many Republicans and Democrats. Everybody agreed this was the man that should have been the chairman. And it is absolutely our great privilege to have you tonight, Mr. President. We thank you for honoring us with your presence. I will say this, I have known Peter since he was a boy. We go way back, and I was actually introduced to him. He was very young. I had a babysitter I was very fond of. She was delightful. She introduced me to Peter Hans when they were both, I don't know, I think they were under 20. So I've known Peter his whole life, and I'm so proud of Peter Hans, president of the University of North Carolina. Mr. President, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Joe. That's a very generous and very kind introduction. I feel much better about myself, by the way, after those very warm words. And thank you for being such a wonderful leader at St. David's, in the university system, a great family man, attorney, civic leader. Thank you for your friendship and your leadership. I greatly appreciate you.
Mr. President, before we begin, may I just sort of set a few ground rules? Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that wonderful introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, as Joe Knott was saying, we're honored to have Peter Hans with us tonight. And Peter, the audience is made up mostly of our students at St. David's, largely juniors and seniors. And of course, their parents and friends of the school have tuned in, just so you know who it is that you'll be talking to.
Great.
And ladies and gentlemen, Peter and I exchanged emails with his administrative assistant, planning tonight's series of questions. And I want to get right to it, Peter, if we can.
Please.
Because we have students, they're probably wondering, in fact, I know they are, how is it that you get to grow up and become president of the University of North Carolina system? Can you tell us a little bit about your personal story that has landed you in this wonderful position?
Sure, Dr. Greggs, it wasn't a particular career path for me. It's been an inadvertent one, but a great example of being open to opportunity and potential. When a window opens for you and you feel and hear a calling to take advantage of that. As Joe said, I grew up in Southport and Hendersonville, went on school at Chapel Hill. I ended up on Capitol Hill, working for members of the United States Senate, came back to North Carolina, joined one of the state's largest law firms, counseling the private sector on public affairs. Along the way, I had been elected to the State Board of Community Colleges for a period of 6 years, and passionate advocate of community colleges. I moved on to the UNC Board of Governors, as Joe mentioned, for a period of 12 years, including a term as chair. So captured and inspired by higher education and its ability to affect lives positively, to move our state in the right direction, that I changed my career course to higher education, ultimately going to work for President Spellings and then becoming president of the community college system before assuming this role in August of last year. So 5 months on the job and challenged by it every day. But what a wonderful privilege to be part of this great institution serving our state.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have to tell everyone that we're going to ask you about the community college system as well, because we're so interested in that. It's such a vital part of the state's program and education. But when you were appointed last June, when we were talking, or actually last January was the appointment, almost a year ago, right? This week?
No, elected in June, took office August 1st.
August 1st. Yeah, I think I called you on July 1st and set up this this invitation. And we're delighted to have you with us. Could you explain to us a little bit, because most people won't understand quite, what's the relationship of the president's office to all of the chancellors and campuses and to the Board of Governors? How does the charge of being president work?
Sure. The basic structure of the system is this. The Board of Governors, where Joe Knott sat as a great member, is a 24-member body that's charged with the overall policy making throughout the university system. It's elected by the General Assembly. And the Board of Governors chooses the president. The president is the chief executive and chief administrative officer of the entire system. The 17 institutions and their chancellors, as well as the CEO of UNC Health, report directly to the president. Now, those institutions also have boards of trustees individually that are appointed by the Board of Governors and by the legislature. And those trustees have certain authority that's delegated to them by the Board of Governors and serve as advisors to the chancellors. So Board of Governors chooses a president, me, 17 institutions, and UNC Health, all supported by boards of trustees and a board of directors in the case of UNC Health. And that's the basic administrative structure of the institution. Now, the chancellors and the president work very, very closely on a daily basis, meet with them weekly, talk to them very frequently, helping them work through any number of issues that may land on their desks that day. We've certainly had a very close relationship over the past 5 months with the challenges of COVID. And I'm very pleased to say that we've got a number of strong chancellors serving and leading. I know Kevin Guskowitz joined this series just a few months back, and I hope you had a good visit with him.
He was terrific.
He really is. He really is.
Yeah, and Randy Woodson has been many times to the campus.
Oh, good. Go Pack. I'm going to give you my pack.
Well, that's a big help. And so let us just understand, when, let's suppose a search or a vacancy comes open on one of the campuses for the chancellor. Western Carolina, for example, was recently looking. How does that work? Is there a search committee that's local that then makes a recommendation to the board or to you? What are the details of that?
Yes. The way the current system works, a campus search committee is created, which I play a role in its appointment. They advertise the position, interview potential candidates, and send on at least 2 names, hopefully more, but at least 2, to the president, who ultimately makes a recommendation to the Board of Governors for approval as chancellor.
I see. Yeah, good. And could we ask you, Mr. President, what are the challenges now in this year of COVID? We've had this at every level here at St. David's and at church, every organization, institution, the Art Museum, the Symphony Orchestra. We had a panel discussion in November with all those leaders talking about it. What's it been like for you to try to manage the 17 campus system in the middle of the pandemic?
It's been challenging. I think that word probably a little overused these days, and I apologize, but it does capture the feeling I'm experiencing. Again, having started on August 1st, this was the beginning of our fall semester. and students were already coming back onto campus as I took office. And I think in many ways it's been a very humbling experience because of the complexity of a college campus in terms of the residential setting and the delivery methods of higher education. It has been a lot of moving pieces all at once.
Mhm.
And right off the bat, we ran into a very quick spread, opening surge at Chapel Hill, NC State, and East Carolina.
Mhm.
And tied back to large social gatherings, certainly understandable. Students, particularly after being in lockdown since March, excited to be back on campus. But there was a number of health and safety concerns that emerged at those three campuses. And so we had to move to online learning for undergraduate education. The graduate schools, the research, clinical functions all moved forward, but for undergraduate education, it had to go online. So it was very difficult. It was very difficult. And this is, within 2 weeks of me arriving.
I know.
And there was very little that I could do at that point other than try to help our campuses think through the appropriate steps to maintain the health and safety of our students, faculty, and staff.
Mhm.
Now, I'm pleased to report that we were able to absorb the lessons of those three institutions and adapt them elsewhere. So our other 14 institutions did, at least in COVID terms, quite well at managing through the situation. In particular, our historically Black colleges and universities had extremely low positive case counts, and was so pleased and impressed by the culture on those campuses that said, hey, we're going to make sure we look out for one another and respect one another and follow the protocols. The administration there took some very smart steps. And so I'm very proud of our institutions that were able to navigate through this. I think we're far better prepared for this spring semester, which will start in some places late January and others early February. And it's a good thing we're more prepared because, of course, the statewide spread of the virus is so much higher right now that it's especially important to be cautious.
Yeah, of course, Peter, we're up against the same thing.
Sure.
Week by week, we're always negotiating what we have to do. Should we teach classes online? Should we be on campus? We're starting up again tomorrow on campus, but we've been off this
Good.
past week doing virtual classes.
Good. It's so important, of course, as you know, for that in-person learning to
Right.
be a component and an option. Because while I'm a fan of online learning, it's a great supplement, it's a great complement, but there is so much that has to take place
Right.
in the one-on-one interaction. And I know you understand that and appreciate exactly how you've managed through this.
Yeah, it's absolutely the case, and we're committed to that. And Randy Woodson spoke about this, and Kevin Guskowitz made the same claim. That it's just important to get students back on campus as fast as we can and as safely as we can. That's got to be an overriding concern. Peter, can I switch it up a little bit and ask you a slightly different question? There are 17 campuses, and as everyone knows, we have favorite schools that we like. And here at St. David's, everyone seems to pick one, State or Carolina or Western or Wilmington. How is it that you, as the administrator of the system, how is it that you maintain the distinctiveness of each of the campuses? That is, are there different missions and different purposes for them? You don't have to do all 17, but could you give us some illustration of how that emerged and how you maintain it and how you safeguard it?
This is a great source of strength within the system, the diversity of the institutions, whether they're extensive research institutions like Chapel Hill and NC State are to large regional institutions. We mentioned East Carolina or Western Carolina, or the historically Black colleges and universities. the residential high school in the School of Science and Math in Durham, which is an amazing institution. Really an arts conservatory in Winston-Salem, the School of the Arts,
Right.
and so many others. It is important to keep distinctions in their missions, because that's one of the benefits of having a system, of course. Right. Is we don't have unnecessary duplication. There will be some necessary duplication in the offerings, of course. We're a large state. I mean, 10th most populous in the country. So it's necessary. We're a big state, to offer similar programs in different areas of the state. But the distinction in missions allows specialization. It allows us to reduce that unnecessary duplication. And of course, have some economies of scale along the way if we're smart about the way we run the business side of the operation.
Right. Peter, I'm teaching economics, and when you mentioned economies of scale, I'm sure my economics student, all who are tuned in tonight, will understand that phrase. Let me also, Mr. Chairman, let me ask you a question if you can still join us here. Joe likes to say, Peter, that one of the things that the state of North Carolina does best, in fact, the thing that it does best, is the university system. And Joe, could you go on about that just for a moment, and then we'll get Peter to respond. But why is it, Joe, that that you're so convinced, and I would join you in this conviction, that it is excellently done? Joe, you're muted. We'll have to get you off of mute. Can you hear us now? All right. Apparently we've lost Joe. That's okay, Joe, on that. Peter, let me give that question to you. What Joe often likes to say.
Okay, wait, I'm back on now. They just.
Oh, great. Okay, Joe, go ahead. Did you hear?
All right. Well, of course, this is not about me. I want to hear what Peter says. But in my view, the University of North Carolina system provides the best possible education, or the best education available anywhere in the country, for every level of student and every level of preparation, at a cost that is shockingly low. I actually asked some pretty hard questions. This is a hard thing to get an answer to. But how much does the government, how much do the taxpayers support every student? And it's an astounding number. It's $40,000 and more. By the time you count the buildings and the maintenance and all of the staff and all of the people that keep everything running, in addition to the professors and the teachers, it's just astounding. So when I hear the students complaining about their tuition being too high, I just don't want to hear it. But as I see it, there are plenty of students in North Carolina who don't have the privilege of going to a school like St. David's.
Right.
They don't have the opportunity to be prepared to take advantage of a full-blown Ivy League equivalent university, at least when they start. So, but we have colleges in North Carolina that are excellent in their niche, and they can take those students and bring them up to par very quickly in a couple of years. And then they will teach them how to read better, more carefully, more critically. They'll teach them how to write more precisely. They'll teach them how to do their mathematics and reason in an organized way. That's what I call the on-ramp universities. People that this is first generation university, first generation college. And then you have those people who can be launched on a whole lifetime of learning in our system, as well as we have schools that are equivalent to the best private schools in the country.
Right.
Our flagship universities, NC State and Carolina, and students like me, people that were going to go to college had no way to afford going to Princeton. You can't pay that tuition, but you get just the same as good an education, perhaps better, because the professors are available and they're taking care of us. They know they're trying to help us. And So it's just the best thing that there can be in the university, and it has to be. And I'm so glad Peter, the President Hans, is there to take care of this great treasure that we have in the University of North Carolina, from the student who really wants but has not been quite prepared as he should be, all the way to the top student in the state. There's a place for him, and he can maximize and continue his talents all the way through. So thank you again, Mr. President. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That tees up the question nicely. Mr. President, how is it then? What's the charge for maintaining this excellence? What do we all have to do to make sure that the university system lives up to its legacy, which is nothing but pure excellence? How do we do that?
Well, it's a great question, and I would echo everything that the chairman said. We are so fortunate that the people of North Carolina for centuries at this point have invested in higher education, and it has paid great dividends for the people of this state and beyond. We've got to be careful stewards of that investment, those tax dollars, in order to keep the affordability of the university where it is. It is quite a bargain, by relative standards.
Right.
I'm happy to report the Board of Governors will likely approve no tuition increase again for this coming year, which will make for 5 years in a row no tuition increase. There will be very few institutions across the entire United States that could make that claim. The fee increases are limited to 3%. There's always the cost of living, the books and the room and board and the dining and this sort of thing that we are very conscious of as well. But the affordability of the institution is critical for access for all North Carolinians to have that opportunity to find an institution that meets their needs, just as Joe said. Because we have such a wide variety of options, there is something there for everyone. But to maintain excellence, as you asked, it does require that investment, both from the citizens of the state and the students on behalf of excellent faculty and staff and the programs that we offer that will be relevant to their lives as both citizens and their careers, of course. We find this challenged right now by so much online learning, much of which is very high quality. Some of it is, of course, getting faculty accustomed to teaching online. Some students take to online learning. Some find it a bit vexing in terms of their learning process. So I think that's a challenge. This overall COVID environment challenges our excellence as well, because of course, I've said many times, I feel as though the country is experiencing a collective mental health moment. Now it manifests itself in many different ways, but the cumulative effect of a pandemic, a recession, the election and its aftermath, so much going on all at once, all accelerated and fueled by this social media environment that borders on toxic. It is a real challenge to us. I'm sure it is to you as well at St. David's, but it is at best a distraction. At worst, I think it is making it. We're having to double down on our efforts to deliver the highest quality education to our students while providing for their emotional well-being.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Peter. When I was taking my son out to Western Carolina, he spent his freshman year there and then transferred to state. Just graduated a few weeks ago in December. Good. But I remember the dean at Western Carolina saying to the parents and to all the students who were gathered for the beginning of the fall, that he wanted students to get off of social media, that is, to leave high school behind, to move into being a freshman and to getting on campus, and to not maintaining not being stuck really in the social media world that had been centered in their previous high school world, and to let go of that. And I think that's really, I thought that was really wonderful, sage advice for stepping into the university world. And go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, you know, the most enriching friendships and relationships don't take place through a screen.
That's right.
They're one-on-one.
Yeah.
Where you can get to know someone and understand them. Maybe they come from a different background. You can learn about their experiences and thoughts and perspectives. And I feel as though social media, as I said, at best, a distraction. Yeah. Technology is a tool, of course. It's by itself, it's neither good nor bad. It can be used for either one. And there are many benefits to technology, but I think we're seeing right now the downsides vividly displayed, and encourage you know, our young people to spend more time building those one-on-one friendships where it is possible. I know right now is not an ideal time because we're being told to, you know, avoid gatherings and this sort of thing. I understand that, but some of the old ways have some benefit.
Yeah, that's a good point. Chancellors Woodson and Guskowitz were raising similar kinds of points about this, that the social world of college is every bit as important as the classroom world of college. And that's the challenge here. We also, when they were here, we were also talking about this, Peter, that if there's with every challenge, there's always an opportunity. I mean, I deeply believe this, no matter how challenging a situation is, there's probably something good in the challenge that we can discover. And now, with that said, do you think, how has COVID changed, do you think, the life of the university? Are there practices that we'll keep that we invented to handle the COVID problem that may stay with us? Or just, it's a general question, what do you think are the challenges and the opportunities that have come with this problem?
I'd say we've gotten better at the delivery of online learning. We certainly haven't perfected it, but we've gotten better. Our faculty have moved very quickly. Mm-hmm. It's been interesting because the university, higher education itself, has a reputation for being slow to change, right, and adjust. And yet, when this pandemic started, our faculty moved very quickly. And not all happily so, but necessarily so, to become more familiar with online learning. And so we've gotten better. We're moving more quickly. And I think that's good. The university needs to be more agile and responsive to the needs of the students and the state. So that helps us as an institution, ironically, to transform ourselves, become more nimble along the way. And we're going to have to be, because we know so much more now about the jobs of today, much less the jobs of tomorrow, require more education and more skills. And I believe through a combination of the community colleges and our universities, we can prepare really learners of all ages for an economy that is changing so quickly. Mm-hmm. The skill sets of years ago, where you knew one thing and you could have a job for 30, 40 years, really not the case anymore. And so higher education has to keep up with the time. Ironically, COVID, I think, will help us move more quickly to do exactly that. Yeah,
that's a good point. Mr. President, let me take a moment here to say that I want to open this up to our audience in a few minutes. And I think the best way we'll do that, everyone in the audience, if you can go to the chat and type in a question, I think I'll be able to see it, and then I can pass those questions on to the president. And while everyone is gathering their courage and their thoughts about what those questions might look like, I want to ask one or two more questions before we do open it up. And Mr. President, you mentioned the economy of North Carolina and the role of the community college system. And I was telling my students that one of the great beauties of having you with us tonight is not only are you the head of the university system, but for a number of years you headed up the community college system, which I think is just a spectacularly important element in the state's commitment to communication. It helps take care of structural unemployment. When people lose their jobs because they don't have a skill set to stay in the workforce, they can go to the community college system and retrain. Could you tell us a little bit about that? What did you learn in those years overseeing this great system? And why is it so good in North Carolina? It really is pretty exceptional.
Well, here again, the people of North Carolina and its leaders on a bipartisan basis for many, many, many years have made that investment. And again, I think it's shown its relevance in North Carolina's growth and prosperity over the years, and its ability to respond to areas of the state that aren't experiencing the same level of growth and prosperity. When we think about community colleges, it's a wonderful way to move towards a four-year degree at a very affordable cost, at really a lower cost to both the student and the taxpayer, because with 58 community colleges, they're spread across nearly every community in this state. It's a great way to a four-year degree to transfer into the UNC system. Because we have an agreement that governs the transfer of credits back and forth, and that's getting better all the time. It's a great way often on a short-term basis to learn a particular skill and translate that into a job and ultimately a career very quickly. This is going to be critical to North Carolina's economic rebound once we're in a better place here after COVID. It's also a place for lifelong learning for people of all ages, and a way the state reaches those who have fallen behind or been left behind, gives them a hand up to some basic skills so that they can provide for themselves and their families. There's something at a community college for everyone. And right here in Raleigh at Wake Tech, we have really, in many ways, the flagship of community colleges, because Wake Tech, believe it or not, Dr. Greggs, 70,000 people a year go
70,000?
That is more than NC State or Chapel Hill. But that's the level, the broad accessibility, affordability, and quality that community colleges are offering. Now, I view them very much as a sister institution. We work closely together. There are many ways that we can even work more closely together, but it says so much about North Carolina that we have made that commitment to education for all and opportunity for all.
Yeah, it's a wonderful commitment. And Mr. President, let me make sure that I understood that figure. Did you say 70,000 people at just the Wake Community College?
70,000.
That's astounding.
At Wake Tech. It is our state's largest community college. Right. Now, this is on a head count, what they call head count basis, just people taking classes at Wake Tech.
People come
individuals. 70,000 a year. It's a remarkable institution offering so much to the people of this entire region, really.
No, it's a very important aspect. We had Jim Goodman and John Kane come a few years ago on a panel discussion about the growth that's coming to the Triangle area. And you probably know all these demographic figures. They were telling us that the Triangle is going to double by 2040. And that's astounding. And John particularly went on about the importance of the community college system as people move into the area, or as the economy develops and technology advances, when people need to retrain as we do this. Which has to move more quickly, do you think, the community college system or the university system, to respond to this kind of growth that's coming?
Well, really, the community college system is better designed for that, and happily quite nimble in that respect. In other words, a labor market develops in a particular area, in a particular set of skills.
Right.
I compare the community college to a speedboat. I mean, they can make it there very quickly. The university system is a little bit more like a battleship. It's big and it's powerful, but it takes a while to turn. Now, when it does, it is highly effective. But working together, the community colleges and universities can do so much for our state.
Yeah, I think we're so fortunate to have such great leadership over these systems. They're so wonderfully important. Mr. President, we have two questions coming in. The chat questions now filling up. This one from Ben Exum, whose dad you may know. Outside of the COVID-19 environment, what's the most challenging aspect of managing the public university system? Aside from this year with COVID, what normally is the biggest challenge to overseeing the success of these 17 campuses that you have charge of?
You know, I'm reminded Kevin Guskowitz has a great answer when asked, you know, what's your biggest challenge? And he says, so many experts. There are a lot of experts. You may know something about that. Everybody's an expert, including me, about whatever the topic is. I think we've all gotten into that mindset a little bit.
Especially on curriculum.
Yes. We have many epidemiologists, evidently, as well. Thousands, tens of thousands, even. I think, of course, the greatest challenge is to make sure that the enduring values of the university, and I mentioned some before about access and affordability and quality, excellence, as well as engagement with our communities in the state and beyond, remain at the forefront of all we do, and yet provide an education that is relevant to both citizenship and careers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's often the expectation a new president will have this new agenda and new items and fancy names for plans and this sort of thing. I've said, look, if we can continue to follow through successfully on the enduring values of this institution and serve the people of this state,
right,
that will be enough. That will be enough. That will be more than enough, because that's not easy to do. It's not easy to do, to accomplish all of that. And yet those are the enduring values of the university that I'm deeply committed to.
Mm-hmm. That's a fine answer to a fine question. This next question is from Clay Matthews, Mr. President. Do you think it's possible that the school system will increase enrollment because of an ability now to provide online degrees? Is the enrollment at the university going to increase because of this virtual world? How will that work?
Yeah, great question, Clay. So initially, we have seen in the COVID era a slight downturn in undergraduate students overall, but a significant increase in graduate students. Now, this makes a certain amount of sense if you think about people will be moving in for undergraduate education saying, hey, maybe I should take a gap year and let COVID pass, or do some work, or think about my options. Whereas because of the economic downturn, people might have more time to pursue a graduate degree. So overall, we actually saw an increase in enrollment, which again was very different from the experience of universities and systems across the country, which shows North Carolinians' faith in the UNC system, and I want to validate their faith. But to Clay's particular point here, which is, with the economy changing quickly, with the need to gain knowledge and skills that are relevant to those changes, for more adult learners to come to the university, I want to make that possible. Because right now, again, I used this word before, agility. We're not as agile in serving adult learners as I would like us to be. The community colleges do a pretty good job in this respect. The for-profit universities market themselves very effectively to adult learners. Some are good actors. Some provide credentials of questionable value at very high prices, unlike the UNC system. So I think it is incumbent on us to get better in that respect about serving adult learners, because the traditional college student, and we often think of that as being 18 to 22,
Right.
is an incredibly important audience for us. But there are many more North Carolinians who would benefit from what UNC can offer them.
Yeah, that's a
And
great point.
online learning will be the most obvious way to reach them.
Your answer reminds me of Thomas Jefferson's view of the university when he was, establishing the University of Virginia. He imagined that the university would serve people lifelong throughout their life, that you just wouldn't come for 4 years and then be done, but rather you would return to it to learn something or to take a course or,
Exactly.
just to take some time. I think that would be a great thing to do if we could get to that point where everyone regarded the university as their school to which they could return as we go. There's another, go ahead.
Well, Dr. Graves, I'll say this very quickly because I'd love to hear more questions from the students because they've been great so far. That I would love to see us at some point even develop a little bit of what I might call a Netflix model
Yeah.
of higher education, a subscription. You attend NC State and you've actually purchased a block of time that could be used over the course of your lifetime.
That's
And
interesting.
you'll be able to return, not after you've gotten your bachelor's degree, but be able to return to refresh your skills or take courses and continue your engagement. That is truly lifelong learning. And so many details to figure that out, but I'm confident our young scholars are familiar with the Netflix model, and that might be a good way for them.
They sure are. We have another question from the audience, and let me see if I can ask it, retell it in a simple way. Apparently, enrollment among men, white men particularly, but men 18 to 22 has dropped every year for the last 12 years, not only on the Carolina campuses, but across the country. Do you have people in the offices in the Board of Governors? Are people worried about this, or how do you handle trends and how do you evaluate them and make decisions about them?
Yes, this demographic trend is very concerning. Now it's been offset by continuing increases from women attending our institutions, so it's balanced out to a certain degree. But once you get into the numbers, you do see this alarming trend. And I think it would be easy to beat up on the public school system. And I never want to do that because they've got a tremendously difficult job. I'm a product of the public school system. I have great respect for their work, but we're losing young men at earlier ages and they fall behind and don't catch up and they lose their interest in education. Now, hopefully the community colleges capture them at some point so that they can learn a particular skill necessary for work. But through our schools of education, where we train and prepare so many teachers, we've got to up our game, particularly in the area of early literacy. The learning to read and write well in the early grades, because if you fall behind early, it is so hard to catch up. And there is enormous research, enormous data that shows if that happens, the likelihood of going on to college is much lower. The likelihood of running into personal trials is much higher. And so I feel a great sense of urgency about reaching those young people at that age so that they will be prepared for their lives.
So you'd like to connect the dots a little more carefully between public education, public school education, county to county, let's say, and the higher education and the community college system.
That's right.
That sounds like a great goal. Mr. President, we're getting a question, a more simple kind of one, but an important one.
I'll take a softball.
All right. There are two. One, you can guess the second after I ask the first. What do you think that the university system does best?
Well, I think Joe probably said that so well earlier about offering opportunity to everyone through the variety and the diversity of our institutions. And I think that's going to be incredibly important moving forward again, because we know more skills, more knowledge necessary to be successful as citizens, within the economy, and that we'll be able to meet that challenge. I'm confident we will. It won't always be easy or smooth, and we're going to work like heck to make it happen. But I think that's probably what we do best.
Mm-hmm. And what is it that may come to mind that we have to work hardest to improve?
Well, I think really reaching underrepresented populations, because opportunity for all means all North Carolinians. And living here in the Triangle, sometimes we lose sight of those areas, even within our own towns and cities, where some people don't have the same level of opportunity. How do we reach them? How do we engage them, whether through the community colleges or the university system, providing them that public education, improving that quality through our schools of education, preparing teachers? That's the thing we must do better. We must do better, because the amount of increasing inequality among Americans is causing so much political and social tension that I believe education is our best bet to address it.
To address it, to redistribute to take care of the distribution problems of wealth.
That's right.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have one more question that the president and I agreed we would end with for tonight. And that question actually comes from the president's office, and we were talking about this. What does public service mean at this challenging moment in American public life? How is it that we should be responding to the crises, both political, social, economic, whatever it is that we have? What do you want to say to us about the importance of this life in public service?
Well, Dr. Greggs, I want to compliment St. David's and your work in this regard, because it's abundantly clear we've got some gaps in our knowledge of civics, of the foundations of our country that are alarming, that we have a breakdown in civil and public discourse that must be addressed. I've never met a person that I couldn't learn something from if I took the time to really talk to them and understand their perspective. I might not agree with a lot of what they had to say, but I could learn something from them. The idea that we can bridge gaps in our society and prevent things like what happened earlier this week in Washington. And this was heartbreaking for me, particularly as somebody who spent 5 years in Washington, D.C., working in that capital, to see that, to know that institutions like St. David's still subscribe to a classical education that values the humanities in particular. And this may sound strange from a community college guy who also strongly believes in the utility of vocational education for specific skills. But when we think about the humanities, the languages, the literature, the religion, art, ethics, philosophy, these sorts of things, these help us understand great accomplishments of the past, make sense of the present, and help us imagine what the future can be. And if we don't balance that, if we don't emphasize that, if we don't provide that level of education to provide the reasoning, the logic, the rational approach to this world, we face difficult times ahead. And so I want to recommit, much like you already have, to that classical education, to the humanities, and balancing both citizenship and careers, preparing students for both.
Mr. President, that's a wonderful note to sound as we draw to the end of this hour. I can tell you that Dean Martin Brinkley came to the seminar a few years ago, school, and Dean Brinkley made a very similar and very passionate statement, just as you did, very similar argument. And he noted, he reminded us, as Joe will often, Mr. Chairman will often remind us, how literate the founders were. You know, they read Latin every day and Greek, and they understood political theory, and they read poetry. They could translate. I mean, they were an astounding group of people. And the strength of education in the humanities leads to a humane civilization. And without it, we don't have that.
Amen.
And I want to thank you on behalf of everyone here at St. David's for honoring us with your presence tonight, for taking an hour out of your very busy schedule on a Sunday night to come to St. David's and share with us your passion. That's what I heard most, your passion and commitment to guiding this great university system into its future. And Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for coming tonight and for sponsoring all of us and making this all possible. And Peter, we have a gift for you that I can't deliver virtually, but we have it in person, and we'll figure out a way to get it to your house here in Raleigh.
Oh, thank you. It's been a wonderful privilege to be with you this evening.
Thank you so much for coming to St. David's. And we're going to give you a virtual applause here. If everyone could join in, we're going to thank you very much for this.
Thank you.
Mr. President, thank you so much. And we hope that you'll consider coming to our campus in real person sometime when the COVID plague lifts and it permits us to get together.
I'd be delighted.
All right. Thank you all so very much. Good night, everyone. Take care. Stay well. God bless.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Dr. Greggs.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Well done, Peter.
Wonderful.
Great.
Thank you so much. Great.
I love that passion. I really do. It's how can we help? I mean, you have me. I want to sign up. It's just great.
Keep sending us wonderful students.
Well, we'll do that. That's
We're
right.
doing our best. Yes.
Yeah. No, a phenomenal education they receive, and I mean that as a very high compliment. You're providing them with the moral and educational foundation that will be necessary for them to be successful and for all of us to be successful.
No, thank you, Peter. That really matters to us. Take care. God bless, and I hope we'll see you soon.
All right. Good night.
Good night.